Welcome back to Built the Ship, the show where we talk to builders behind the AI transformation, founders, product leaders, and engineers who are actually shipping real AI products. Today, I'm joined by Guru, founder and CEO of Sangnan AI. You can correct me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And
Yeah,
Sangnan is transforming regulatory documentation in the pharmaceutical industry using Gen AI. Excited to delve into the journey. Guru, welcome to the show.
thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I want to start with just like hearing a bit more about your background. What did you do before, this startup, and what brought you to this point to start your company?
Yeah. So, Tyler, I'm a physician by background and then did a couple of masters in the field of pharmacology or drug development. So, by my background and training, it has all been in the healthcare and life sciences space. But after my education, I sort of got an interest in data science, worked in the interface of data science and healthcare, life sciences, and on. Initially, in for a few months in health insurance. Post that, 2 years work for a startup based out of India. And finally, for close to 6 years, I worked for a big pharma based out of India, Novartis. That's when I got most of my exposure here. Um, for 2 years, for 2 years, I'm sorry. Um, so in the 6 years, my 6 years in the big pharma, got exposed to the pharma R&D space. It's quite a lengthy, painstaking, and risky affair. A typical R&D life cycle takes something like 15 years and roughly $2 billion to get a drug into the market. So it's very, very expensive and risky. One of the reasons why this is so is because the industry is highly regulated. Every step in the life cycle involves a number of regulatory compliances in terms of regulatory submissions. In fact, documentation itself takes 30% of the entire time and effort of the drug development life cycle. So I sort of realized this during my career in big pharma, and with the advent of generative AI, primarily with ChatGPT coming to the scene, it sort of triggered a number of ideas that we can try to resolve. Um, so after thinking through this for close to 1.5 years, I decided to take the plunge. Left my job and started my venture in August of last year.
Congratulations! It's like an exciting journey.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, I'd love to just ask, like, if you could explain to us what exactly does your product do? Like, what does it look like to the end user? It sounds like you're automating like a lot of the mundane parts of documentation. Is that through a chat interface? Is that clicking a button? And who are the kind of people that use your product?
Yeah, great question. So as is any kind of activity in the new knowledge based economy, right? There is a lot of grunt work involved, and then there are the minority of that work is the most critical, scientific, and so on. So regulatory documentation means you draft a lengthy document, a report, and that needs to be submitted. This lengthy report takes roughly at least 3 months of effort, out of which I would say 80 to 90% is a lot of grunt work. Stuff like copy paste, converting the tense, summarization, and so on. A lot of work on the language side. So what we built is a generative AI based platform. The front end of it sits right on Microsoft Word. So it's a Word widget. The reason being that regulatory writers in the industry do all their work on Microsoft Word. That is a standard. So we intentionally build this as a Word widget so that there is writers can seamlessly interact and generate content. So primarily, what the primary value that we provide is generating the initial draft of all these documents in minutes, which usually takes months of effort. So ultimately, we aim to improve the productivity of writers and ensure that companies are submission ready in a couple of weeks rather than months of effort.
It's really interesting that you actually integrated. You have a widget with Word. Actually, I wasn't even aware that you could do that. Yeah, what was there any sort of like decision process? Did you just know from the beginning, like, hey, this is where they're working? We need to like this is where we need to surface our product, or did you first try something where you had them log into some other website and they just weren't getting it, and you realized we need to just put this where meet the users where they are? How'd you make that kind of decision? Because I imagine there's probably some limitations in working within Word rather than like creating your own, text editor or something like that.
Yeah, it has to do more with my experience in the industry. The pharmaceutical industry is a traditional industry. Their focus is to bring in new and innovative medicines for the benefit of patients, right? So technology seeps in a little bit slowly. The core folks in the industry as well are not too much tech savvy, and the more friction you introduce in terms of different interfaces, different applications that they have to go back and forth, the more problematic it is for them, and the more there is resistance in adoption. This I knew from my many years of experience there. A little bit of research as well in terms of what are the different options um, helped me take this call. Uh, I think it was a combination of my experience and serendipity, and the way things are going right now. I think it appears to be a good decision.
Amazing. I'm curious to jump into a little bit of like under the hood, and we don't have to get too technical about like code, but just like architecture. When you talk about, one of the capabilities you mentioned is it can generate like the first pass of different documents, right? Is that
Yeah.
one AI agent or one prompt that knows how to do all of those? Or are there multiple sort of recipes for different documents? How do you kind of architect, your AI system, your Gen AI system behind the scenes?
Yeah, so it's definitely from the architecture standpoint, it's a LLM RAG kind of an architecture. I mean that it's obvious, right? But it's not a vanilla RAG, because this is not a search problem. This is not a problem of retrieving content from all the files that are there. Um in fact, it is about it is the way that writers generate draft this content. Writers specifically know that each section of the document that they're drafting, they know exactly from where it is coming from. So we took this fact into consideration, and a lot of custom development on top of the RAG to ensure that we bring a lot of these capabilities right to the writer, which means that to answer your question, it's not one single prompt. It's not like a one shot thing where the entire document generates. It's a combination of prompts that are there to generate one document. But each prompt is not a vanilla prompt wherein the prompt is responded with text and information from all those source documents. We have put in these special capabilities where uh, the documents that are processed in the RAG, we tag a lot of those text assets with a lot of additional information in terms of whether they are tables, whether they are sections, and so on, and make that available in the front end to the writers to leverage.
Very interesting. So,
Yeah.
am I understanding correctly that like if I was creating one of these documents, I don't just say I need document X. It's more like I need to build all the different components of the document. Like I might want a table for this one, but I might want something else for that one, and so the RAG's looking those things up, or am I missing something there?
Yeah, it's not expected that writers would need to write the prompt to generate the content. That's not going to work.
Hmm.
Writers are eating fire literally every day. They have a lot of their day-to-day jobs. So what we do is we configure the template with the prompts.
Hmm.
And so this requires that we test and validate that the prompts work well, and then we make it available to the writers so that now, after it is validated, once they click one single button, all the prompts, the configured prompts run, and the appropriate content is generated.
Okay, that's great. So it's mostly like click a button for the type of form that you want. It's not so much like chat with a bot and write, kind of requests. Okay.
Correct. Though we provide that option as well, that writers who want to try their own prompts, they can, and writers who want to modify the response of the pre-configured prompts, they can.
Right.
But knowing writer behavior, I know that they would want ready-made prompts.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And um, I think, especially in the beginning of the Gen AI wave, a lot of people just thought as, okay, now we can have this chat interface. Everything should be a chat interface. And I think that doesn't always make sense, right? Like sometimes it's faster to click a button if you know you're going to do the same action time and time again. And that's something we've seen with our customers is they'll start out, you know, kind of their first idea is a chatbot, but really all they want to do is run some workflow and automate that faster. If you can just pre-configure all those prompts and click a button to do it, why not? So I love that you're kind of
Exactly.
giving that.
Exactly. I mean, we started off the design of our application was again with a chat box, but then we sort of learned very early that that's not going to work. It's not a realistic expectation for writers to do all the prompts by themselves.
Mhm. But
And fact that these are some of the most stringent requirements. Regulatory documents are documents which go to regulatory bodies, so you cannot afford to have multiple variations, hallucinations, and stuff like
mhm,
that. You have to be very, very careful there.
that makes
Yeah.
sense.
So a
But
lot
you
of
still let
support.
them have the chat. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
No, but
Yeah,
I
yeah, go
like that
ahead.
you still let them have the chat there so that if they want to explore or expand upon it, do you think that like over time, as people, it's kind of like with computers, people first didn't even know how to use a mouse, right? Like, do you think that over time you could see your product and the users of your product evolving to want to be able to prompt more? Or do you think like this is an industry where they'll just always want it kind of done for them?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the case that they would want this to be done for them all the time. For example, foresee that the way that the capabilities in generative AI are improving rapidly, the system is going to become more and more intelligent. And so rather than us configuring these prompts going forward, we're already working in our company as well on a pipeline that will automatically take care of a lot of these prompts based on the type of regulated documents and based on the writer behavior as well. I think things have become, we foresee things going to become more and more smart
Mhm.
and would need less of interventions either from us or from writers.
Makes sense. Yeah, and it's interesting building an AI right now because you kind of have to live in the moment of like what it can do, but you also have to be thinking about, in a year or 2 months or one day, who knows, when it gets more intelligent, how are we going to incorporate that and evolve the
Yeah,
product? So you're kind of thinking in both places. You mentioned
yeah.
evals being really important. Obviously, you're in a highly regulated industry. It's important to you that you don't have hallucinations. And how do you approach evals? Like, do you have a golden data set of the different flows that people would want to do or the different documents that they would want to create, and then you test your prompts and your sort of AI features against that? Like, how do you actually test and validate?
Exactly. So right now, what we're doing is there are not too many, but there are sufficient of these documents available in the web. So we're sort of leveraging that. We have annotators within the team, subject matter experts who sort of annotating, and we have a pipeline to constantly evaluate various aspects of the system in terms of, for example, retrieval, in terms of generation, and so on. Um, yeah, and then with more and more adoption in the industry, I think things will become better because we'll have real world on the ground kind of evaluation. But
That's
that's
great.
absolutely required. Yeah,
Yeah, and that kind of builds this
because
moat.
we are in that space. Yeah.
Definitely. What would you say, like, really roughly, is your split of like when you're doing evals? How much of it is these annotators providing their own opinion, almost vibe checking the AI system versus no, we have a set of 100 things that run programmatically that get checked against. Like, how much do you need to, because we've seen in some industries, it's like we need this expert. Like, let's say it's marketing copy. You need the marketing copy expert to be judging it. You can't just write like some tests that'll suffice
Yeah,
as evals.
yeah. So the ultimate accountability rests with the subject matter expert. It has to be um, a human in the loop for the evaluation as well. There's a lot of things that we can automate in terms of the pipeline around evaluation. We can have some kind of assistance to the human done by the LLM. So those sort of things that we are trying to do, but ensuring that ultimately the call stays with the subject matter expert.
Awesome.
So that's how
Well,
we are doing it right now.
it sounds like you have a pretty advanced sort of AI implementation. I'm curious what's kind of under the hood. Are you doing, leveraging like open source LLMs, open AI, Anthropic? Do you use any frameworks like LangChain? Like what tooling do you guys use to build these things?
Yeah. So one thing is I'm a more of a business guy with a little bit of data science knowledge. But from what I can gather, I think in the LLM RAG architecture, what we have sort of realized is the doc processing, which is basically the processing and the indexing thing, which is basically the embedding model associated with that, is something that we have fine tuned based on the life science data set. The retrieval is another core strength of the system that we have. This is something that we built over a long period of time. So it is sort of sophisticated and mature. The generative bit, by the way, Tyler, is sort of commoditized right now.
Hmm,
So it's like plug and play right now. And in the pharmaceutical industry, there is a trend now where companies are taking licenses of, let's say, OpenAI or Claude or something like that. And we have given them the option that you can plug and play your generative LLM into our system. And we don't expect that to change the behavior of the system, because more importantly for us, it's the retrieval and the indexing part which is key here.
very interesting. Awesome.
Yeah.
How does your team, there's a lot to build. The world's changing quickly, new models come out. Like how do you maintain like rapid pace of development in like this really compliant and really high stakes, kind of product? I'm sure like on one hand you want to ship quickly and build quickly, but you also need to make sure that, you know, you're not hallucinating and things like that. How do you kind of think about that? Even just from like
Yeah.
either the tools you use or team process?
Yeah. So one thing is that the team is small, so we're pretty nimble. Decision making is really fast. And the second thing is we are sort of battle tested. We have had our share of failures as well, and we know that everything should start from the customer. So we focus in terms of what will add value to the customer, and that's what we do. So we clearly, it's an irony to say that we don't want to overbuild right now. There's a lot of stuff that we can do, but we are not overbuilding. What we are currently doing is trying to improve the quality of the entire retrieval, the processing, the retrieval, all those core components, because that's the most important. Quality is the most important in the space that I'm in. Everything else, we take a very careful call based on what the customer wants.
Great. And on the note of like how your team works together, you mentioned that you're kind of on the business and customer focused side, and then I assume you have an engineering team. How do you kind of do they share like prototypes with you? Is it in a pretty traditional way, like other software development, where you give sort of a set of specs and then they create a full working prototype and then show it
Very
to you?
chaotic.
Yeah,
No
startup
system in
world.
place.
Okay,
Exactly. We don't.
yeah,
We just maintain all our requirements in Google Sheet.
great.
That's it. Because we know that things change so dramatically week over week. We just have clarity in terms of what needs to be built in the next week.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then exactly, and then we build, we quickly, so we have two environments. We quickly, they demo it to, they show it to me. I'm sort of the product owner,
Hmm.
and I take the call on whether it's worth it, what to prioritize, and so on. So very chaotic. That's what I would say. No stable systems around product development. And I think it's working well for us. Yeah.
And do you ever like are you also doing any sort of prompting now that, anyone can be an engineer, quote unquote? Are you also coming up with ideas and prompting, or do you leave it to the subject matter experts and the engineers? Always curious to hear like how involved the business side is getting in the product side, in your role is getting into the development process.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of my involvement as well, because I sort of understand how things work. I don't code, but I understand because of my previous roles related to data science. So I frequently interact with my CTO, sort of brainstorm with him around various thoughts which appear to me as logical, and then
Hmm.
he has to take a call on whether that makes sense or not.
Makes
Um,
sense.
and then around the prompt engineering and stuff more towards the business side, I take care of the development of that. So
Okay.
there is a layer of development related to templates and prompts, which I
Hmm.
take care of, while everything below that, the back end, everything, the team takes care of.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a trend we've been seeing is that like the subject matter experts are becoming more of the prompt writers and prompt engineers because, anyone can talk to ChatGPT. And so you realize, oh, I can write a prompt. Oh, but I also know the subject matter expertise. I should be the ones creating the system.
Absolutely. We don't have none of our engineers are involved in prompt engineering.
Very
Yeah.
interesting. Awesome. Well, looking ahead, like where do you see the company going in the next year? Is it building out more product? Is it go to market? Kind of what's next on the roadmap for y'all?
Yeah, so I think the space that I'm in is huge. The regulatory documentation space is really huge. Um, I mean, yeah, we are even calling ourselves as a horizontal documentation platform because once you, if you have deep knowledge of the industry, you will realize that this documentation space itself is huge. So even 2 to 3 years down the line, I don't see any need for us to move beyond core documentation, and there is so much for us to do even there. For example, there's just one thing to talk about generating the initial draft rapidly. There are
Mhm.
so many things that we can do with agents as well. There's stuff related to quality control.
Mm,
There's stuff related to how writers can collaborate with his peers and stuff like that. Um,
amazing.
so we have this in terms of the go to market. We have this agreement with a channel partner, and we're trying to take this to US and Europe via them. And then we ourselves are doing founder led sales in India and rest of the world.
Awesome. Well, good luck with that. I know, being a founder myself, go to market, it's hard, but it's the important part, right? Because you're getting close to the customers.
Yeah,
So really
yeah.
appreciate the time. It's been a pleasure chatting with you and having you on the show. Where can our listeners learn more about, yourself, your company, and follow along in your journey?
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing your insights, and it was great talking to you, Guru.
Take care.